This presentation is about coaching and the different ways it can be incorporated into schools. So first, just a little bit about myself. I'm a teacher and I've been teaching in schools across the entire age range 4 to 18, trained secondary, but then have since been in the prep schools. And I have been the PSB lead at my school since September. I am also a coach and I have a coaching qualification with CMI, and I looked into doing a further coaching qualification, did a whole load of writing, a whole load of research, couldn't afford to actually do the course on a poor teacher's salary, and so decided to write all the material into a book instead. I previously self-published a little children's book, which I sold for the Army Benevolent Fund, and so was going to just do a little vanity publish on this, but then actually went and scored a publisher, so it's due for release in February. So the whole story then, teacher, PSB lead, coaching, but I feel that it's all sort of got a little bit of synergy because at this point in my career, been teaching quite a while, found that there's a lot of these coaching principles which are linking back into teaching, and it also takes me back to where I first started, which was as a PE teacher. So what I'm going to be going through in this presentation is knowledge. So knowledge about coaching and who needs to know and what do they need to know. Agency, who is the owner of this coaching and the targets that are being set. Coaching culture and the importance of this and whether it's already in place. The methods of coaching involving the coaching models or the plans that are used, and looking at the impact of coaching. So first of all, in terms of knowledge, then this is knowledge of coaching for staff at the school, and there are various organisations that can deliver coaching or accreditation. So within the prep school, there are a company called I Love Coaching that is working with prep school heads and is offering them free training, and then they go off and support and coach other heads, but this is only available to heads of schools. CMI and ILM are two of the major companies that provide coaching qualification support, and some of this can be done via online learning. So there's the coaching that could be needed by staff or the knowledge that they require on coaching, but then also for pupils. And the question might be as to whether they need to know about coaching in order to be coached. It might depend how you envisage incorporating coaching into your curriculum. But one argument might be that in terms of the time that is required, then actually imparting knowledge on coaching to students on what it is and how to do it might be one way of addressing the time issue. So we're all here because of the Learning Skills Trust and how the Skills Development Framework is now putting time into coaching. And one of the things that I've seen recently on the PSB side of things is that the word tutoring seems to have come out. And I'm hoping that the word coaching will be used more frequently with the PSB as well, because there's a big difference between tutoring and coaching and mentoring, and people's interpretations and how they respond to those three different words. So firstly, this is where it all began for me. So I trained in PE and education, and this is Muska Moston, who was an Israeli PE teacher and professor. And one of the things that I was shown at university was his spectrum of teaching styles. Now, it wasn't quite as long when I was shown it, and in fact, I think I won a little study skill mnemonic at the time where I came up with the acronym CRISP, like golden delicious. And I think the CRISP bit stood for the command, the reciprocal, the inclusion. I don't think self-teaching was there, so maybe this, I don't think I actually won it, which is possibly why my acronym didn't work. But oh, self-check maybe. There you go. So it did work. But basically the point is that Muske Mostyn had tried to look at different ways of teaching to respond to different learners within the context of PE teaching. And I think it's only in the last few years that his thinking has gone into wider pedagogy rather than it just being related to sport. Now, this isn't about Muske Mostyn, but if you look at the different names for the teaching styles that are now being used, you can see that I've tried to highlight some of them as being more teacher-led and some more coach-led. And you'll see that one of the things at the end of the new spectrum, because Muske Mostyn's work was further developed by one of his mentees, Sarah Ashworth, and this spectrum of teaching styles has been further developed. And you can see that there's self-teaching, or it could be called self-coaching, at the far end of the spectrum, and the word autonomy there is, so the ownership of it for the individual. But as you look from left to right, you're working through a spectrum, and that spectrum is trying to show how it goes from being very directive to non-directive. And this is another principle that comes through in coaching, this move from being directed to non-directive. One of the coaches that's been involved in this is Miles Downey, and he's tried to speak about it as being in terms of push and pull in who is involved in the relationship and who is making the decision making. So giving greater autonomy to the person being coached or the coachee. So if we're looking at what is coaching, then one of the important things to look at is what isn't coaching. So probably not a great slide to start with. What isn't coaching? What isn't coaching is mentoring. So in this picture we have, I presume, Telemachus and mentor, and this is the origin of the word mentoring, because when Odysseus went off to fight in the Trojan Wars, then his son Telemachus was left in the hands of Mentor, and Mentor was there to guide Telemachus. I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly. And it was about him being somebody more experienced and more knowledgeable, and that was the basis of their relationship. Now, modern mentoring doesn't always have to involve somebody that is more knowledgeable or more experienced, but coaching is very different to that, because it definitely does not require that, because mentoring in its sort of more historical version is a more directed approach, whereas coaching is trying to be non-directive. So when you're looking at various definitions of coaching, and there are hundreds out there, there are certain words that often come up, and one of the things that you might want to look at is whether you come up with your own definition in terms of the Learning Skills Trust and what it means to you, or whether it's more important for individual schools to have their own definition of what coaching is. But one of the things that all definitions seem to have in common is some reflection of the autonomy or the empowerment of the coachee, so in them owning their own goals. Goals is another thing that factors in a lot of the definitions, and then in relation to achievement or development, growth or success. So various words like this coming into definitions of what coaching is about autonomy, so the person having their ownership of their own goals and unlocking their potential. So as one aspect of coaching, and when we're trying to think about what it actually means, then thinking about the process of coaching is important, because coaching is about having conversations and it is about relationships. It doesn't have to be one-on-one. So coaching is generally, more commonly done in a one-on-one basis, but there can be group coaching, there can be reverse coaching, where there might be somebody more experienced being coached by somebody less experienced, or peer coaching, which could be done between staff or even between students. So the first part of this then is, as we're beginning to try and understand what coaching means, is trying to think about whether we need to build into the curriculum this knowledge for children. So do they need to know about goals, and do they need to understand what process goals are as compared with product goals? And also, do they need to know about long-term, short-term goals and the level of challenge or the different types of goals that are out there? If they're going to be setting their goals, then what do they know about perspective? Have they been taught different methods of looking at perspective, and what is their relationship with feedback? And this sort of like ties in later with discussing like the culture of a school and growth mindset, etc. Achievement. So in looking at this, one of the things that I'm going to be talking about is different models of coaching and the emphasis on achievement, and in here looking at Snyder's hope theory. So Snyder's hope theory is about having looking at hope and how the belief in hope can bring greater buy-in, greater motivation for students, and how it can be done by hope stories. So sharing stories where hope's been involved and there's been success. And then also planning for hope, so coming up with goal setting and writing out plans for self-development. And then goal enhancing, how can that be improved upon as well? Goal bonding is about having a relationship with somebody that is helping them to write that initial plan. And then the reminding of earlier successes so that it becomes a cycle of hope too. It's also about choice. So for the student to know where they have choice, so where they have autonomy. So there's autonomy in the goal setting and autonomy in the options that they have and autonomy in the plan that they might set for themselves. And then when we're talking about the plan, it's knowledge. Does the student actually know how to write a plan, what's involved, what different options they have, and what SMART goals are? And then in terms of encouragement, looking at things like visualization, and then the last stage is looking at the importance of reflecting on those goals so that you can set better goals in the future. So in terms of knowledge, probably one of the most common or most practiced goal models is Sir John Whitmore's GROW model, and the acronym stands for Goal, Reality, Options and Will. Now, Sir John Whitmore was a racing car driver, and he used his knowledge to impact coaching, and his starting point was with racing driving, but as he went on, his coaching models were used in business. But as this GROW model has become more predominant in the business world, it's become clear that people that are using the goal model, the starting point is having a goal. So it's knowing what you need to do. And one of the things that our students might need knowledge of is help in what their goal might be in the first place, rather than an adult in the business world being clear on what goal they need to achieve as a starting point. So this is a really great model, and it might be one that you choose to use with students because its simplicity is beautiful. But there are maybe other things that you would need to consider when you're developing coaching at the school. So the next thing we're looking at is agency. And this is where it gets a little bit tricky. If you're looking at things like Sir John Whitmore's model and businesses that are using coaching, then people in that respect have chosen to be coached. So they may have coaching that is paid for them, or they may be buying into it, but they have chosen that route. And that agency is important, but for children, there comes a point where we need to decide what level of agency, and every time we nibble away at that agency by giving a little bit more direction, then we could be impacting the motivation of the student. So coaching is normally a choice. You've chosen to be involved in that conversation, but if we're putting it on the curriculum, then we're telling them they are going to be coached. And so it's trying to ensure that there's as much choice as possible in there. So the OECD has done some research on this, and one of the things that they've looked at is the notion of co-agency, and that if a student, potentially because of age and inexperience, whether they would be better if their goals are decided with others around them, so with teachers or with the parents as well. So the students having agency in their learning, they're tending to show greater motivation, and they're more likely to have learned how to learn, and that is the other aspect. So when I'm talking about knowledge, if we're developing a curriculum that has got coaching within it, we're giving time over to the process of coaching, but again, maybe thinking about what students need to know about coaching before they can actually be coached themselves. So one of the things the OECD did was come up with this ladder of coaching, and if you look at it with the move from manipulation to number 8 on the ladder, the young persons initiative, so their own sort of autonomy. And when they looked at this model, you can see how it really links in with Miles Downey's spectrum of coaching, and also with Mostyn's spectrum of PE teaching styles. When they introduced this to children, one of the things that they had as feedback was that it might work better as a sun model. And one of the findings from this research was, as you can see from the little quote, "The light is brightest when we shine together," is because the research seemed to show that the type and the quality of the goal might be more important than the source of the goal. So this is tricky with this discussion around agency, in that if the child has agency but is choosing the wrong goal, are they best to continue with that wrong goal, or should the teacher try and give them some enlightenment around it and try and guide them, not lead them, but maybe guide them towards a better goal? Interestingly, it's an international study, and one of the things that they found is that the approach to agency in different countries is sometimes different, and apparently the Portuguese don't even have a word for agency, so they had to try and come up with a word to describe this agency. Throughout this presentation as well, in the actual PowerPoint, some of these things are linked, and the study is hyperlinked there if you want to read more about it, and also the report from the OECD too is also hyperlinked. So if we take it back a level, if we're looking at culture, then if a really great coaching conversations, coaching lessons, etc., are going to be occurring, then having that coach culture in place. So this motto, fail, learn, win, was adopted by the military a few years ago, and it's about having that coaching mindset. The fact that that failure is just an opportunity to learn and to develop. So if coaching is really going to be successful, then the pupils have to have a good relationship with failure. And so that needs to be considered, how that is going to be introduced as well. So how are you giving feedback to students on their work? What do whole school assemblies, etc., on failure. There's a school, I think it's one of the GDST schools, that used to have like a celebration event of things that people had failed in, so that there's that real recognition that failure is just a learning opportunity. And then there has to be a desire to grow, so a desire to grow and develop, and a belief that you can grow and develop. And this needs to come from the entire community. It's no good telling this to students if the staff aren't believing in it. So the coaching culture really needs to come from everywhere. Just coaching needs to be involved in all lessons, so it needs to become a pedagogy for teaching, and there needs to be coaching for appraisals for staff, and school leaders need to be involved in coaching too. And then all of this then leads, once you've got this culture in place, the fact that coaching is about having good conversations with people. So there's also the knowledge of what good conversations look like. So whether that is the knowledge for staff, or whether the pupils themselves are going to try and learn about what good conversations look like, so that they can become involved in peer coaching, if that is one way to deal with the time management issue of how coaching is going to fit into the curriculum. And again, there, the community, it's because it's the whole school approach. If this is going to work, there needs to be the coaching culture for coaching conversations with pupils to be more successful. So in terms of coaching then, and it being about conversations, there are sort of three parts to the communication. One is the verbal communication. One is the non-verbal communication, so what you're saying with your body language. And the third element of communication is the listening. So we'll just take it back a stage to the non-verbal part. And one of the things you might like to think about is where you're having these coaching conversations. When we introduce coaching with the students, one of the things that we were aware of is that we were trying to do group coaching, but then there'll be aspects in the classroom where it's one-on-one. And actually thinking about how you're aligning your chairs, whether you're doing it in a certain place in the classroom, and how you are creating the environment. What is the classroom that you're doing it in? Are the tables very regimented? Is this somewhere that this conversation is going to be a nice sort of relaxed and informal conversation? So you're thinking about communication, and the tone of your voice can be important, and the rhythm, what you're saying. And obviously coaching is about questions. It's not about telling, it's about providing some great questions that can offer a little bit of challenge to the coachee and get them to unlock their own potential through the questions that you are asking. And a lot of it as well for the coach is about listening. So whether this is thinking about training for staff, or whether it's peer coaching and training the students to be better listeners of each other, then there's people talk about active active listening. So rather than just listening and, I've heard what you're saying, really trying to engage with what's being said. So this is from a book, I think it's a mother and daughter, Tabana and Tabana Siggins, that have written about the power of curiosity. And they've said that there are 5 levels. And when you get to that 5th level, it's going from having conversations where you're listening, but you're trying to bring the whole conversation back to yourself all the time, for it to being a focus on understanding the other person, and then wanting to understand them and wanting to help them so much that you're really listening with every sense. You're looking at them, you're trying to listen to what they're saying to really try and be a better coach and help them as well as you can. Right, so this brings me on to another coaching model, and this is Peter Hawkins and the CLEAR coaching model, standing for contract, listen, explore, action, and review. And so this brings in another element over the GROW coaching model, in that there's a contract. So this is more designed for a business approach. And in terms of that contract, for coaching adults, it would be about the statement of ethics of coaching. It would be about the nature of the relationship, how it's going to start, how it's going to end, where the coaching conversations are going to happen, how often, expectations on both sides, etc. And in terms of just bring it to point here, it's about the contract. And the history of coaching has had a lot of crossover in the past with counselling. And there is a possibility that in these coaching conversations, because a lot of coaching models bring in emotions, and you're really trying to get people look at themselves and try and gain a little bit of perspective on themselves. And so because of that emotional aspect, and how all our decisions can be affected by so many different areas, if we're coaching students, it's probably important to recognise if the conversation is going in a certain direction, and whether there would be better people, so whether it's then going on to being better in a counselling type environment rather than in a coaching environment. And so it would be really important in terms of contracting with students to be aware of what they can say, and just like in a safeguarding environment, letting them know what you can keep a secret and what you might need to share with other people. So in terms of methods then, so far I've mentioned Sir John Whitmore's GROW model and the CLEAR model as well. Now you might decide that no coaching model is required. In terms of coaching, it's just about having a good conversation, but you might find that using a coaching model adds a little bit of a structure to that conversation. So just going to introduce you to thinking about targets in coaching.
Got the handoff from his teammate, and he took off running toward the end zone. Okay, look at this. He seems to be in the clear. Half the defenders, but guess what? It's the wrong way. So here, just before he hits the wrong end zone, an adult on the field is like, turn around, and watch this. He goes back the other way.
Yes, he does.
And not only did he hit the ball back where he started, he kept going. He keeps running. Everyone on the field, look at this. All the way to the other end. Touchdown.
He made it.
Touchdown.
Okay, that's...
Okay, so the point of that is to try and illustrate to you that a lot of coaching models have sometimes come from sport in the first instance, and then been developed for business and for adults and for people that have knowledge and have experience, and how coaching in schools might look a bit different, particularly when you're talking about this being in place with students from year 9 to year 11, so not even considering like sixth form students and the level of experience there. And so this is bringing it back to the target. So rather than having a goal right from like the first instance, the importance of maybe considering discussions around what a target might be. So part of that might be thinking about like the bigger picture, and I'll come on to that in a moment. So what I'm sharing with you here is my own coaching model. Now, I'm not saying to use this, but I'm just going to try and explain some of my thinking around why we are using this. And the first instance is on that the need for students to have a bit more of a discussion around their goals rather than probably coming in with a clear goal right from square one. The enlighten aspect comes with a lot of coaching models. So John Whitmore's reality aspect of the grow teaching model. Another deviation though here is with the emphasis on achievements, and I think this is really important with students, and it's why I really believe in the Learning Skills Trust and the PSB, because so often one of the things that is leading to disenchanted students is them feeling a failure and the focus on academic subjects and the outcome rather than the process, and about skills and about other areas of strength that they might have. And looking at that sort of more holistic approach to education and getting children to focus on what they are good at, I think can be really important. You'll find hundreds of other models with choice or options in there, and also with help and how goals are set out. The one thing that, as much as the simplicity of the Grow coaching model is beautiful, one of the things that I've built in here is looking at where encouragement is coming from, and also reflection or reviewing and improving. You know, this is a cycle. You don't just do one goal and go, hey, you've achieved that. It's building on that. So it's like hopes, the hope theory, and how the hope enhancing at the end and building back into new hopes and new goals. And it's the importance of that reflection at the end and going, okay, great, I've achieved one thing. I know I can do it now. So where am I going to go next? So in terms of discussing targets with students, one coaching tool that's often used is the Wheel of Life, and there's a hyperlink here from the website that I got it from, which is the Youth Empower program, and they ask a series of questions and then they come up with this radar diagram. And this might just be something that they could do before a first coaching conversation. And that's one thing that you might like to think about is in terms of your coaching conversations. Sometimes adults, when they have coaching conversations, are giving coaching homework. So they're given something that they need to do before the next coaching conversation, because the coach is always trying to help them to move forwards. So it could be that one of the things that you do before your first sort of proper coaching conversation is get your students to look at something like this. And then basically you try and discuss the bumpy ride. And it might be that they want to focus on their strengths, or it might be that they want to focus on one of their weaknesses and to pull that up. And again, this goes back to agency as well, because the student might look at this and they might choose a goal, but maybe in terms of co-agency, do we need to try and guide them towards a particular area? Do we want their goal to be an academic goal, or are we going to allow them total agency? Because if they see the success of goal setting and them choosing their first goal and then the reward once they've achieved it, they're then going to then believe further in goal setting and maybe choose a better goal in the future, but they will have done it through agency rather than thinking that there's been direction towards this. So there's been some research done on students, and I think it was a Norwegian study, and the link is there again. And they found that a lot of students do choose academic goals, but there's also a lot of students do choose sports-related goals. And we've done this as a school with students in years 7 and 8. And there does seem to be quite a high proportion of children that do choose leisure goals. So it might be one thing to consider is whether you want them to have one goal in mind, whether you want to give them some direction that they have to choose one academic goal and one other goal, whether they're going to have multiple goals. I think probably if you're going to do multiple goals, like trying to maybe just limit it to a few, like 1, 2, or 3 goals. The other thing to consider here is SEND. This report seemed to show that some children with intellectual disabilities tended to focus more on career and academic goals than other students. And so whether students are choosing the right goal, and again, whether co-agency or whether the student should have complete agency on this. So in my model, again, other models exist, you do not need to use mine. The next stage is enlighten. But whether you're using this model or most models out there have some aspect which is looking at perspective or looking at reality, and that is the point of the coach, is trying to help the person realize what's holding them back, or what are their options for moving forward. So in terms of enlightenment, looking at growth mindset, and again this ties back to having a coaching culture within the school. Is this one of the aspects that you need to focus on? Do children know what growth mindset is, and do they? Is it something that they see in place around the school? It might be that you want to try and introduce students to a range of coaching tools, and this one is one of my favourites. It was actually a couple of years after I came across it that I realised that this Johari window was made from the names of the people that actually created it, which sounds a bit stupid now because when you say the Johari, you know, but I've always seen it as the Johari window, which maybe was one of the confusion elements for me. Now this Johari window has 4 quadrants, and I call them quadrants because they're not squares, because some people are more open and some people are more private. So this could be, in terms of the target, this could be like a bit of a conversation and trying to get people to think about where they are. Are they an open person? Are they a private person? But this is one of the bits that trying to get some buy-in for taking on feedback is this little unknown potential quadrant, in that maybe there's things you don't know about yourself that others know about you, and that might be where your unknown potential, and so getting feedback from others could be the bit that really unlocks that unknown potential. In terms of enlightenment as well, I'm guessing you're looking at this picture and you're going, aha, I know that picture, that is De Bono. And this is De Bono's thinking hats, and maybe this could be used as a coaching tool as well with students. So if you are having a group coaching session and getting them to thinking about De Bono and then apply it to their own goals. So probably going to get this wrong off the top of my head, but the yellow is about strengths and optimism, so looking at your goals from that perspective. The white is about facts. The red is about options. The black is about the obstacles that are going to be there. The poor little green hat, I've totally forgotten, but maybe you're going to scream it at the computer screen for me now. And the blue is about the plan, or the chairperson of the hats. How are you going to go about looking at all of these and putting it all together? So this might be one way to, whether it's about what the goal should be or whether it's about the options for the next plan. This could be one thing that you could look at with students in terms of looking at the reality or enlightening them about a particular goal or perspective. Right, this is another key player in terms of enlightenment, and Tim Galway has written a whole series of books called the Inner Game. One of his most famous ones is The Inner Game of Tennis. So he was a tennis player and a tennis coach, and he noticed that the interference that people have, you know, it's the pressure, oh, I'm going to mess this up. I notice myself when I'm coaching, and if you get them practicing like a tennis serve, and the students are always telling me, you know, oh, it's just because you were watching that I missed up this particular serve. And, you know, in any situation, there's always so much going on in the environment, and sometimes we are then adding to that. And it might be that a student has already got enough going on in their head, and Timothy Galway called this the inner game and the outer game, and said that you can have, he described it as self 1 and self 2, in that you have that inner critic inside, and getting students to address that inner critic and to think about that voice inside them, and to enhance their performance by limiting the interference from this inner critic. Tim Galway, if you're interested, he wrote the book The Inner Game of Tennis, but he then went on, and there's other books. I think there's The Inner Game of Skiing. He also wrote, I think it's called The Inner Game of Work as well. I should know, I've read it, but I can't remember if it's The Inner Game of Work or The Inner Game of Business. But well worth reading if you can work out what the title is. If you're group coaching as well, it might be interesting to use various coaching tools. This one was one that really influenced me in terms of coaching, because I think it just really made me think about my own goals. And this is Abraham Maslow and his hierarchy. And one of the things with this hierarchy, he said that basically people need physiological needs first. So you need like shelter, food, water, etc. And then you need to feel the safety. And then from there, you need belonging. So we look for relationships. And once you are happy there, then you're looking to build your esteem and get a sense of who you are, which is when you get onto self-actualization. And I think one of the issues with this is that when it was first introduced, people thought that it was like a linear sort of like climb up the hierarchical model, whereas now people know that you can move up it and slip down. And I can definitely appreciate this, because I know for myself that I feel like I've crept up into certain areas, and then I've had periods in my life where I've slipped back down again, and it makes you look at yourself. So it takes back to that enlighten, and makes you consider where you are, who you want to be, etc. So this might be something I feel students from year 7 up could cope with, understanding this and a discussion of what is affecting their goals, and it might help them looking at this, choosing the best goal. Another activity for enlightenment is focusing on strengths, and this is a pack of cards called At My Best. They're really beautiful cards, and you are supposed to go through them and shuffle them and pick out the cards that you think are more you, and then I think you're supposed to end up with with 9 cards, and I've used this as part of a sort of like warm-up in an appraisal, because they can sometimes be a little bit awkward, and so this little activity, and it just gave like a drive for the conversation, because then we could discuss the person's cards and get them to speak about what they had done, which actually supported the statements on these cards, these descriptions of them. So it was a nice opener for a conversation. And again, you might find that this is a useful activity with students. But more importantly, like getting students to actually focus in on their strengths rather than looking at their weaknesses. So making sure that there is that balanced approach. Which brings me on to achievement. Now, achievement is on my model for various reasons. So it's about making sure that achievement, and whether it's a feedback sandwich, which isn't the best way of delivering feedback, because it's better within a coaching conversation and getting the student to realise it for themselves. But even in the feedback sandwich, where you're giving that constructive criticism and sandwiching it between some getting those positive bits on the outside. But more than that, it's about celebrating and noticing the achievements. And this is important if small wins are going to be made. So getting students to reflect on what they've achieved. Too often they reflect on, the more negative aspects, but trying to get them to do this and celebrate it. So to share it, so mention it to other people, mention it to their coach, or in terms of me, in terms of achievement, when I am achieving in terms of writing reports, 1 report written equals 1 minstrel. But celebrating that achievement in whichever way is best for them is really important. So noticing and celebrating achievements along the journey too. Right, now this brings us back to choice. And at this point in the coaching conversation, you have mentioned the target, so that you've discussed the wheel of life. You've started to focus in on a particular area, and you've either decided to give students a list of goals that they might choose from, or you've maybe told them that they have to have an academic goal, but they have autonomy from there. So we've got choice in place, and from there you have discussed in enlightenment. So the student has been thinking about their own assessment of their ability at the moment in relation to that goal, and they have sought feedback from others. So maybe they've looked at their school reports, maybe they have actively sought feedback from other people, and with the help of their coach they've also got some enlightenment. So they've looked at de Bono's thinking, perhaps, and tried to gain some perspective. Has somebody got an agenda when they're giving that feedback? Really trying to get a clear reality on the situation. And then further to that, you have a choice on the next steps. So once you've got that goal and you've considered the you've been enlightened on your situation, and you've got your options for moving forward, it then brings you on to the choice of the plan and how you're actually going to execute it. So if you're looking for a coaching model that really focuses on choice, then the Coaching Centre's Achieve model is one for that, where you have you assess the current situation, and then there's a creative brainstorming, and there are various ways that can be done. Some people like to use loads of resources when coaching, so you might be like doing mind maps or something similar to this. Then you hone in on the goal and you initiate options. And in my model, this is now where we've got to, where we've honed in on the goal and we've started to think about options. Sometimes there's techniques in coaching called scaling. You might get students to rate 1 to 10 how good they think different options that they brainstormed on would be for achieving their goal. So that would be the evaluating options, and then you get on to actually creating a plan. So this is the help aspect, and this is for me the help aspect of the teacher model is about thinking about SMART goals. So we had that initial target, but now it's turning that into a SMART goal, and from there it's actually creating a plan. So in terms of SMART goals, again, students might find this quite tricky. I think even as adults we do, to try and make sure, you know, the relevant bit, if you've discussed it being an academic goal, if that's been part of the conversation, then maybe that one has already been gone. And achievable, hopefully you've guided them to something before this point, rather than suddenly them trying to make something totally unachievable into a SMART goal. But trying to make it specific and measurable and time bound at this point, so that when they're writing it down, and I think it's important that they do actually write their goal down somewhere or in multiple places, so that they are clear on this goal. So my own children have actually got, throughout exam periods, they changed their goals on the screensaver on their phone, so that their goals, every time they picked up their phone, it was clear to them what they were trying to achieve. So they have a SMART goal. Now we've already discussed whether when they're creating their plan, whether they're focusing on one goal or whether they want a couple of goals. And it might be that when they're thinking about longer term goals or shorter goals, that they want a more challenging goal. And there's some books from Jim Collins, who writes on Built to Last is one of them, and he speaks about BHAGs and the hedgehog principle. And the hedgehog principle is about the hedgehog having one great thing that he does, which is he curls up into a ball, and you know that's great. He's himself, and it's the right thing to do. And the other element he speaks about in this chapter is about BHAGs, and these are big, hairy, audacious goals. And so it might be interesting to discuss the notion of BHAGs with your students and really get them to have like a stretch goal, as well as maybe some shorter term goals, so that they get that feeling of achievement, which then is going to feed back into the coaching cycle and make them realize the benefit of coaching, the benefit of goal setting, and want to do it again. So I think it was Antoine Exupéry who said a goal without a plan is just a wish. And so the next thing to think about is how the students are actually going to capture these goals. How are they going to turn that goal into a plan? Are they going to do it like in a Gantt chart and have it sort of like in an Excel document? Are they going to keep a journal and write down so that they know that they're making progress? Are they going to, we actually have, at my school, we have like a bespoke platform that we use, which works within teams, where students and pupils can write down their plan, and they look at their progress, and they can look at other forms that they've filled in over different periods, so that they know what they've achieved and can reflect on that. But trying to think about what their plan is and how they're going to record it might be something that's important for you to consider too. So in terms of that, one of the, I think again, the Norwegian research that I looked at, it said that students didn't have the skill set to create those plans for themselves. So giving some guidance on that might form part of the coaching curriculum. And it might be, again, that there's autonomy in that you might present the pupil with different options for what their plans might look like, but then giving them guidance on what they're actually going to do. So, you know, they might decide to fill in a form, they might decide to create a journal, but giving them some ideas on what that might look like. One of the things that could help them with a coaching plan is a discussion on marginal gains. And in terms of marginal gains, then discussing the story of Dave Brailsford and the Olympic team might be important. And one of the things Dave Brailsford did was he looked at 1% marginal gains and said that you can just make tiny changes, but they can lead to something big, which in this case was Olympic gold medals. And he looked at all sorts of things for the coaching team. He looked at pillows and how whilst they're being coached, if the pillows are allowing them to sleep better, then that's going to impact their performance. He looked at things like painting the inside of the vans that the bikes went in, painting them white so that specks of dust were noticed. He looked at diet, he looked at massage gels, and every single thing. He looked at outfits, and apparently he looked at heated shorts. All of these things, just 1% tiny incremental gains. And again, in terms of speaking to your students about plans, then making them thinking about these marginal gains and also the milestones along the way. So, and again, bringing back in the achievement and getting them to celebrate those milestones and look back, because sometimes these goals can look really big. I remember when I had said to myself, and I made myself say it out loud, there's some research that says when you say your goals out loud that becomes more impactful. But getting students to write them down, to say them out loud, to come up with a plan. And in terms of marginal gains, one of the things I did when I said my goal of writing a book out loud, coming up with a title is, you come up with a title, or you design your front cover, and then you write your contents page, and each one was a milestone, and just nibbling those little bits along the way just makes it more achievable, and getting students to recognize that can be important. In terms of encouragement as well, getting students to visualize their goals. So whether they have a picture of them having achieved their goals, so they're really thinking about it. The picture of the basketball player is to do with some research that was done, I think, in the 60s on visualization, where somebody had 3 sets of basketball players, and they split them up in terms of ability, so that there was no difference between the 3 different groups. And I think the way that it went was that one practiced every day for pretty much a month, one did nothing for a month, and then the last group, instead of actually practicing, they actually sort of like visualized themselves shooting those hoops every day for the month. And now it wasn't like a massive improvement, in that it wasn't the people that visualized the goals over the person that actually practiced that won. It was the ones that actually practiced that won. But the ones that did visualize, they actually thought about themselves shooting through those targets. They did outperform the ones that did nothing. So visualizing your goals is really important, and it also ties in with self-motivation. Now, this self-motivation is the bit that we are really trying to get to with coaching, is that they have got to want to do it for themselves. They've got to see the benefits of that plan. They've got to see those marginal gains. They've got to notice their achievements, but also recognizing the commitment. And that might be who else they need for this support. So is it their coach that's going to help them commit to their goals? Is it their family? Is it other people? Are they going to celebrate their goals with other people? And that is going to help feed back into this cycle of encouragement as well. Oh, look at that. It's at this stage that I realise that I've misspelled encouragement. So please envisage this slide with an extra E in it. Right, one of the other things that you might like to mention when you're talking about encouragement is getting children to recognise when they're in a state of flow. And this is, I think in another life I would have studied this. Apparently you can do degrees in happiness, and I think that would have been an amazing topic to have a degree in. And one of the people that really looked into happiness studies and flow is Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. I think I pronounced that correctly. And this is when you are in a process of doing something that you just you're not even aware of your surroundings. And I definitely get into this state of flow sometimes when I'm playing hockey and just don't even realize that I'm doing something. I'm just enjoying it so much. And getting students to recognize when they've been in that state of flow, to help them to achieve it again, and then for that then to add into the coaching cycle so that they recognize that state of flow and benefit from it more in the future. And Stephen Kotler has written about this in his book, The Rise of Superman. And there's a great little video that students might like about Danny Way, the skateboarder, and how he felt that he was in the state of flow when he did his jump over the Great Wall of China, which after all the construction of the ramp, he actually on his first attempt broke his ankle, which he then said he could hardly feel as he then achieved his goal. And it was all thanks to this state of flow. And again, in terms of getting on the right wavelength with students, this book, The Rise of Superman, is great because it's got all sorts of stories of people doing adventure activities if you're truly trying to get your students to understand this. So that was flow in action. Okay, and then that finally brings me on to the reflection and the final stage of the coaching cycle. And one of the things that I've written here is appreciative inquiry. And again, I've mentioned my coaching model here, but there are all sorts of coaching models. I haven't mentioned WOOP, which is wish, I think it's obstacles, outcome and plan. And then there's also here appreciative inquiry. And again, it's this focus on achievement. It's like discovering aspects about yourself, and it's having dreams. So again, it ties in with Snyder's hope theory. And it's about designing a plan so you reach that destiny. And at this stage, there's reflection. Reflection for students, it's encouraging them to reflect on their goals, whether they chose the right goal, whether they need to change their goal and have some flexibility and resilience. It's reflection on the process. Did they have the right plan? Did they have the right options? And all of this is so that they can learn and work out what they've learned from their coaching journey so that they can then set further, better goals in the future. So in terms of reflection can come at any stage of the target model. So as you're going through, it can be in target, enlightenment, achievement, choices, help, encouragement, and reflection. And I'm not going to read that. That's something that you can look at for yourself without me reading off the slide. Right, the final thing to think about is impact. So you've obviously invested a lot in developing a coaching culture and developing coaching conversations at your school. And one of the things that, if this is an early stage, is to really think about how you're going to monitor the impact of your coaching. And different organisations have tried to do this with actually sort of quantifying results with return on investment, but one of the things you might like to consider is just using simple case studies. So if this is the start of a coaching journey for your student, trying to get them to either write journals at the start, and then to consider at the end of the year and when they reflect on their goals, hopefully that they'll be recognising the impact, and then the coaching cycle just becomes easier, and you may even move on to that final end of Musker Mostyn's teaching spectrum, where there's self-coaching because they're so bought in. They know the importance of goal setting, they know the importance of writing plans, they've seen the impact of coaching, that they are self-coaching, or whether they decide that they are better if they have a coaching relationship and get their own coach, and the coaching conversations and the coaching cycle continues.